Hey guys, it's nearly Easter, so I wanted to show you a couple of recipes that I just love. Not just at Easter, but really it's the fruity loaf lover in me. Just wants to make these at any time. But if you're into hot cross buns, but you don't want the time tag and the fiddle, I just want to show you something that makes life easy. So this is a really old one of mine. It's kind of a steamed fruit loaf that I have invented myself, but you can go and have a look on Cookidoo. There's a couple of different recipes on steamed buns, etc. So I'm just going to show you the short and simple of it by using our basic bread recipe. Now there's a few up there, bread rolls. Some involve milling up the spelt flour or the grain first, the spelt grain, which is often I do. I'm just going to use the basic bread, and I'll add that 100 grams in at the end, because that's really the total you want to have at the end of the day. So we'll just move through on that. Alright, so we're just going to get our water yeast mix to begin with. I need to activate this yeast, 300 grams. We're going to steam this in the varoma, so if you've never done the bread in the varoma, you want to watch to the end of the demo, as you're going to love it. So quick and simple. Right, we want 2 teaspoons of dried yeast, or 20 grams if you've got fresh yeast. Alright, just going to activate that. Couple of minutes. So you could bypass this by just using warm water. I often do. Just run the tap, get some warm water. Sometimes I just add a little bit of hot water from the jug to bring it up to the 37 degrees, and we can move through this 2 minutes quickly. So I just want to show you the few ingredients I've got. I've got some baker's flour. So while you've got a recipe going, you can actually view the recipe detail, and you can see what else you need to get out. So olive oil, baker's flour, some salt. Now I'm turning this into a bit of a surprise fruit loaf. So I've got my baker's flour here. I think I might be a little bit short, but I've got some spelt flour on standby. I've got my salt. Now because I'm going to make this a sweet loaf, I'm actually going to put a tablespoon of coconut sugar into that as well. And we want some sultanas. So you can use mixed peel in this if you wanted to. Mixed fruit with peel. I find this is quite lovely on its own. And sometimes I might even throw in the peel of an orange to start with, and that will give me the orange zest flavour to add to it. I've got that on standby for the next recipe I do. So you can just see there that by peeling an orange, wrapping it in some paper towel, just make it dry out a little bit, and that will help when we go to zest it, making it nice and fine. Alright, so we're nearly there, and I've got my bread mat ready to go here. Olive oil. Now I'm using the baker's flour. You can use plain flour, and you can also use gluten-free flours if you want to play around with it. You will get a slightly different mix at the end of the day, so it might end up a little bit more sticky. So you just got to keep that in mind. All right, 425 is of course the amount here, but then we've got to add the extra 100 from the start of the recipe that we didn't use the grains. So let's go with all up. I'm going to do about 5, 10, just because I've added a little bit more of the wholemeal spelt, you can dry it a little bit. Okay, we still want the salt. Balances things out. Alright, I'm going to have any wheat flour. As I say, I'm just going to use that little bit of coconut sugar. Brown sugar, normal sugar would be fine. And we're going to need, mix first and then knead. Alright, now we will just usually give it a bit of a scrape down. We'll end up taking this in, most of it. However, with that spelt flour, it's just a bit more wholemeal. Let's get that in there. And I also think any remains on the lid, these will be in there. Okay, so we're going to knead. Keep an eye on it from here. Alright, so what I'm going to do to turn this from a basic bread into, of course, the fruit loaf that we want, is I'm just going to use probably a good cup of sultanas, but I don't want to chop them up, so I'm not putting them in now while it's being kneaded. I'm just going to drop these in on the last half an hour. I'm looking at that. Half a minute. Alright, so I'd say, yeah, we've probably got a good 200 grams in a guesstimate for this amount of dough. Now you drop a few in here, of course, they're just going to be chopped up. We don't want them all chopped up. Optional if you like, and just drizzle a little bit of orange juice in there. Just to help put a bit of colour, a bit of sweetening. Alright, let's take a look and see how that's looking. Great. Might be a little bit heavier than I usually do with the raisins, but that's okay. The mixture's nice and warm, so it's going to prove in my bread mat here. Just take that out. Nice and clean. Alright, so we just want to pop those whole sultanas into the mix. Don't need to fiddle too much because it's going to rise. So we're going to set that aside for about a half an hour now in the mat. If you don't have a bread mat, you can just sit that in a stainless steel bowl and put some cling wrap over the top. Just to give that a chance to prove. On a warm day, sometimes I put it outside in the sunshine on a windowsill somewhere. So we'll set that aside. Alright, now this is where it's handy. If you're doing the same recipe, you can stick to the same bowl. There very handy when you've got a second bowl. It's almost like having a second Thermomix. And for the month of April, I should say, we've got the double bowl offer, second bowl lid blade set offer. If you host a demo, you get access to that. So you want to let me know if that interests you. So we're going to let it prove, and we're going to come back to this. So you're going to see we're not going to actually need to heat our oven for it, as I'm going to be steaming it in the Varoma. So we'll just knock through that. Alright, so the next recipe I wanted to show you, which is another, as I say, cheats way of making hot cross buns, and that is the beautiful spiced fruit loaf. This is something that I've often done, but there's another one. I've got two here for your suggestion. You can have a look at the difference in ingredients and see what you like the most. Hot cross bun loaf. So I've also done this one. This suggests cooking it in the oven, but I've also made it in a silicone loaf and popped that in on top of the Varoma and steamed it as well. So there's a few different options for this one. So let's start with this. Walk through this. I don't think it's really, it asks for a clean. Oh, let's give it a clean. All right, so the orange zest going in. All right, it wants baker's flour. Now I'm going to use my spelt flour. I realised I had a packet still in here, so I'll use that. Okay, just make sure that you tear those. Now the reason for a bit of flour in this is going to mill up nicely our zest. We used to just zest on our own, which works most of the time. Okay, just zest that up. And we're going to set that aside. Oh, it smells good. Where did that peel go to? Isn't that a great idea? So you can do that for any other kind of bread work that you want to put some lemon or orange zest through. Just using a bit of flour and mill that up. Okay, now we're going to use some water. Some milk. I've just got some almond milk. You can use any plant-based milk, and you could even use a bit of cream if you were short. Water it down. Use coconut milk from a tin as well. It's all interchangeable. Okay, so again, I'm going to use the 2 teaspoons of yeast. One sachet is usually around 7 grams. And we're just going to bring that up now, warm that up. Alright, let's take a peek at the recipe, see what's coming up. Right, so once that's warmed up to 37 degrees, we're going to add back the reserved grated zest and flour mix and the remaining baker's flour. So remaining of 400 grams. This one's going to call now for butter, sugar, salt. So you know, these are recipes you could subby out if you wanted to leave, you know, the butter out and want to make it dairy free. Of course, you can use a coconut oil. or a butter alternative. And then your spices. Now, I've done this with or without the egg, sometimes making a chia egg, which is just chia zipped up with the water. Makes it quite a jelly-like substitute, so you can do that if you're short of eggs, or if you have an egg allergy. And then we're going to add the sultanas and the currants. So we've got some currants as well to go in this one. Sultanas and currants. And all our spices. Get those aside. I've got a couple of good other recipes for gluten-free hot cross buns if you want to take a look back half a dozen or a dozen recipes ago, which probably last year. And yeah, there's some great ideas if you're wanting to look at eliminating any flours, wheat flour anyway. I think I used one with almond meal and some coconut flour. So, and then I've got, one of my recipes is called my hot cross donuts. So I actually put them in my donut tin and they're a bit of fun. So I guess the fun side of this is the piping and doing your topping, which is fun, but it can also be fiddly and time consuming. So if you want to bypass that, that's why I love this loaf, because you can just drizzle on top with just the flour water mix to make your crosses across the top, or you can leave it out altogether. And this recipe is also fine if you wanted to chop up a few chocolate chips and have some ooey gooey chocolate melts throughout it. That's a bit fun. I've also done a bit of chocolate on top for the kids as something a bit different. So let me get our spices ready. Oh, it smells good already, that orange zest. It's beginning to smell like hot cross bun. All right, there's my grated. Zest. It's a bit wet. Alright, so 400 grams of baker's flour. So again, this is my spelt. So I usually err on the little bit lesser side because being wholemealy does often suck that liquid up. And that's okay if that happens. Just always got a half an orange on standby. Half teaspoon of salt. Okay, we want butter, which I just generally stick to my olive oil. Just quick and easy to pour through. No needed to melt anything. Okay, we want some sugar. I don't use that much sugar. So I usually go for my coconut sugar, and it's quite flavoury, so I usually do about 40 grams. There you go. Add a bit more, so 15. I think you'll find that the currants and everything makes it sweet enough. 2 eggs. Nearly forgot the eggs. And save your shells. I'm going to look at a video a couple back ago, show you how you can make calcium supplements out of those. Okay, we want cinnamon. Everybody loves their cinnamon, don't they? An overdose on this one. 1, 2.5. Alright, and we've got nutmeg, so let's find the right one. Nutmeg, you know, has got quite a strong flavour, so you want to stick to the 1.5 teaspoons there. And I haven't got ground cloves, I only had whole cloves there, so I'm just going to use a bit of a spice mix instead. Allspice. Okay, I'm going to mix this up. Alright, so this is where you'll just have a look and see the difference with using my wholemeal flour. Okay, it's still a little sticky, that's okay. This is where you get a bit of an idea if you need to add just a little tad more of liquid. We're adding sultanas, so it's going to dry it up a little. Okay, 100. Currants. You might just want to stick to the one. You can do all sultanas if you don't have the currants. Alright, now we're going to knead. Grab out your mat. Again, you could use a bowl. I like to put a little bit of olive oil to spread. They're non-stick, but generally they do hold a bit, so pop a bit of oil on. I'm going to do my loaf in the loaf tin today. When it comes out, you'll see how much dough there is. You might want to split it in half, do two smaller loaves, and one of the other recipes cuts it in half, 2 balls side by side, which just means it comes up like a high top with that ability to cut it, tear it apart, pull it apart like the shops. So they're a bread tin, you could use that. You may also just want to use little muffin cases, silicone muffin trays, which they can go into your varoma then, steamed up. And I'm also getting the varoma ready for our first loaf. So I've just got myself a bread and butter plate, which is going to fit in now. Okay, there's our kneaded mix. Now it's got the eggs in it, so it's going to be slightly different consistency to our previous dough. And mainly the spatula to get some out of it. This one will. And I'll sometimes use the turbo just to give it a spin, get as much out of it as you can. Oh, it smells good. So if you wanted to do this, just to get everything out, just park your recipe by hitting the home, slide over to the functions here, and you want to find your turbo. Pop your lid on, hit the turbo, and we're just going to give it couple of second bursts. And that just gives you a couple more tablespoons of mixture that you wouldn't have used. See? Clever. Don't waste a drop. Oh, it smells so good. Like cookie dough recipe. So we just want to get that now wrapped and proof. And we'll come back to bread number 1. Okay, so we want to take our first loaf, which is lovely and proven now, and it's just about rolling those lovely sultanas in the middle of it and forming a nice ball. This is just going to be like a cob loaf, and you could put this, of course, into a tin and bake it in the oven. But this is what I'm going to show you of our amazing steaming capability in the Varoma. Is if you've just got a dinner size plate, well, a bread and butter size plate, I should say, that's going to fit into the base. Perfect, hey, of your Varoma. But keeping in mind this one's slightly raised up, and that's good because you need the steam, a bit of vent area for the steam to rise and to cook this. It's just going to go in on top of your bowl. Now I've got a litre of water in there. You want a minimum of a litre of water because we're going to cook it for an hour. So this will raise up quite nice. It's a bit like your steamed, you know how Chinese do a lot of their work steam. So we want 60 minutes Varoma, and we're going to get started. Speed 2, 2.5, just to make sure. I'm going to go 3, just to shoot that steam up and get that cooking. Okay, we're going to open our dough. This one's been a bit longer. Been doing a few other things. Now, there's so many different things we can do with this. I've done like a honey kind of mix, flattened it out and rolled like a scroll, just for quickness. And that could be put as well into a loaf if you want to be quick and simple and not go with your crosses. You could do it in 2 lots here and just plop one side by side into the bread tin, and you get that little high rise, like a double loaf of bread you see in Baker's Delight. What I'm going to show you, there's going to be 2 different ways, not to give you too much information, but of course it's always about options. Next time you do it, you might want to try it differently. I'm just going to take probably 2 pieces that are similar sized, and I'm going to try and get out of these around about 8. So I'm going to cut them into half again, and then in half again. So we're going to get 8 pieces, roughly all the same. Now you can make your buns here, just stick them on a tray and let them rise together. That's just pretty much a basic fruit bun, hot cross bun. But I'm going to show you using my springform pan here, which I love the fact we can grab from the mix shop, these easy little papers. So that makes it simple, no cutting and no fiddling around. And I'm just going to put these in the tin, slightly rounded, You might want to wet your hands for this. And it kind of comes out like a pull apart, like we would do. We used to do a recipe that was like Chelsea buns. So there you go, just a rounded little roll. And these are going to spread. So if you've got time, you can allow it to sit, rise, prove again. I'm going to do this quite quick. So I'll move on to the next one. I'll show this to you in a minute. Just keep your hands wet so it doesn't stick to you. Hubby's outside with the blower. Ha-ha. You get that? Okay, so there I've got 8 rolls, buns. Hold it up too far up. And these are going to rise. So they look really good and they pull apart, a bit like a bread roll type of mix. Now I've just made up previously my crosses flour mix. So while I do have my piping bag, it is a lot of clean up after, and if I reuse these little bags, I find they're just handy for such a thing like this. Where I can just throw it out at the end of the day. What you want to do is just cut a little tip off, and of course you need a nice pair of easy scissors for this, sharp scissors. Let's see if I can do this without too much hassle. And once you've done your crosses, after the hot cross buns cook, you're actually going to be doing a sugar water mix, which is just a glaze on top. Alright, that's quick and simple. Hey, throw the bag out when you've done. Let me just take this up and show you what I've got. Ta-da! So they're going to go in the oven like that. And place it back down there again. They're going in a 180-degree oven. I'll put that in now. That's one way of doing these amazing hot cross buns. Or we've got the loaf way. So I'm just going to show you that now using a bread tin and just another batch that I've made up earlier. You know, this is all of 500 grams of flour with a few currants. It's really inexpensive. This one was just folded in, so the raisins, the sultanas might fall out a little bit on this one. But again, we're going to cut this into, I'm going to get 10 out of this one. So let's see if we can get a nice lob. And let's see. Oh, I've got 8. We could go smaller, but I'm not going to be too fiddly. I promised you this was my quick hack in making hot cross buns. So I don't want to make it too fiddly. So let's just see how many we've made out. 2, 4, 6, 8, that's fine. It's a little bit different to the last one where you were making them round. We're going to make them long. And we're just going to sit them up like that into the pan. You need to work fast because you want to cook side by side. Okay, now this is probably slightly less. I have made the 600 gram one. So I'll just show you this. This is as well going to spread. But the 600 gram will just give me that little bit more dough to pop in the, I'll show you that. Ta-da! So just imagine 2 more in the end there. Alright, and again, you can use our dough mix to make the crosses. Bit slap happy job, guys, but to keep it under 20 minutes, I was hoping to do that as much faster. I just wanted to show you that. Now look at this. This is just a glass jar, and I'm just going to pop that in there, and that's just going to hold that up. I'll just give it a little bit more shape and comeliness. Alright, so I'm going to pop that in the oven. So there you have. It's going to rise and end up coming up into a hot cross bun loaf, just like that. So before I finish, I'm not going to wait for my other one to be cooked. We've still got around about 20 minutes. So I just wanted to show you, ta-da! The steam doesn't affect my camera. One large, super steamed fruit cob. How cool is that? That comes out quite sticky once you're done, and you think that it's not cooked, but you do actually just let it rest for a while and it dries out. So there you have it. Look at the size of that. That's 500 grams of flour in there, and all steamed beautifully in your varoma without the oven. So there's some ideas. I've gone and fogged up my camera. There's 3 different ways of doing a hot cross bun. So I hope you give those a go. Still got plenty of time over the weekend. You might even want to just be cooking them Sunday lunch, afternoon tea, morning breakfast. I even love it when there's leftovers for dessert. Put a bit of jam on them. They're yum. So yeah, like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you want to see anything here that's healthy and a little bit different.